All right, so Argentina's calling your name, huh? And you've got Wonders of Argentina in hand. Smart move. This deep dive, we're going to make sure you get Argentina, not just the touristy stuff. Ready to uncover those hidden gems that'll make your trip unforgettable.
That's the key. Argentina, you can't just show up and expect a single experience. Even a guide this in-depth, it's just scratching the surface. The thing is, Argentina's geography really shapes the whole adventure.
Right off the bat, the guide paints Argentina as this land of contrasts. Towering Andes Mountains on one side.
And bam, vast Pampas plains right next to it. Hard to picture, right? Like two different worlds.
Totally. It's like, how can those landscapes exist in the same country?
Well, Argentina's shape has a lot to do with it. It's super long, over 2,700 miles north to south, one of the most stretched out countries on the map. And that messes with the climate big time.
Makes sense. So we're talking drastically different climates.
You go from subtropical up north, perfect for yerba mate, then you hit temperate in the central regions where all the vineyards are, Malbec, Torrontés, grapes, that kind of thing. Then boom, down south in Patagonia, it's practically Antarctica.
Wow, talk about a temperature swing. And speaking of contrasts, the guide throws out some pretty wild examples. Perito Moreno Glacier.
Have you seen pictures of that thing? It's massive.
It's like a giant ice monster.
Photos don't do it justice, honestly. But then you flip the script, same country, you've got Iguazu Falls, completely different kind of wonder.
Iguazu Falls, those are the ones with...
Yeah.
How many waterfalls was it?
275 individual falls, spread across nearly 2 miles. Hard to even imagine that much water just cascading. And right in the middle of all that, the Devil's Throat, the biggest, loudest waterfall of them all.
Devil's Throat. Okay, that name alone, I'm sold. But hold on, the guide also mentions these arid deserts in Patagonia.
And rainforests up north. It's like a whole bunch of countries matched into one.
It's mind-blowing. Okay, so we've got mountains, plains, glaciers, deserts, rainforests. What about the cities? Let's talk about Buenos Aires. The guide calls it the Paris of South America, which I know those comparisons can be cheesy, but...
This one kind of fits, I gotta say. Buenos Aires, it's got that European elegance, but with this fiery Latin American heart.
Like a tango.
Spot on. It's a city steeped in history, too. Elegant architecture everywhere, whispering stories about European influence. Walking those streets, it's like stepping back in time.
I can picture it now. Cobblestone streets, maybe a street musician playing tango.
You'll see landmarks, too. Casa Rosada, the Presidential Palace, Plaza de Mayo, the Central Square.
Those are places you see in photos, right?
Yeah, but being there, feeling the history, it's different.
And the guide mentions this cemetery, Recoleta Cemetery, not your typical cemetery. Right?
More like an open-air museum. It's where Eva Perón is buried, but the artistry of the tombs, it's mind-blowing.
I've never heard of a cemetery being a tourist attraction, but I'm intrigued.
Trust me, it's worth a visit. But Buenos Aires, it's not just grand landmarks, it's the neighborhoods, too. Each one with its own vibe.
Like what?
Well, the guide recommends Recoleta, if you like that elegant feel. Palermo's the trendy spot, And then La Boca, super colorful, artsy.
Oh, La Boca, the one with the
Yeah.
colorful houses, right? It's like they're all made of scrap metal and painted in bright colors.
Yep, that's the one. Used to be a shipyard, so they just used whatever they had. Makes for some great photos.
Okay, that's going on my list. And of course, we can't forget the tango. The guide really emphasizes how deeply ingrained it is in the city's soul.
Born in the working class neighborhoods, but now you find it everywhere. Historic cafes, modern clubs, even just couples dancing in the streets.
And always wanted to learn tango. It looks so passionate and dramatic.
It is. It's like the city's heartbeat,
Yeah.
And speaking of things that'll get your heart racing, the food.
Yeah.
Buenos Aires has this incredible culinary scene, so much diversity. But let's be honest, you can't go to Argentina and not have an asado.
Oh, the guide's description of the asado had me drooling. It's like a barbecue. Right.
Yeah, but it's more than that. It's an event. Slow-cooked meat over an open fire, sharing with friends and family. It's about savoring the moment, the company, the whole experience.
It sounds like a celebration of life. And what better way to celebrate than with some good wine?
You got it. You got to try some Argentine Malbec. Seriously, some of the best Malbec in the world comes from Argentina, and you can find some incredible bottles at every price point.
I've started to think I might need an extra suitcase just for wine. But let's not forget, Buenos Aires is just the beginning. We've got a whole country to explore.
It's like Argentina unfolds before you as you venture out from the capital, and each region has its own unique flavor. Like Iguazu Falls, for instance, one of the largest waterfall systems in the world. Breathtaking doesn't even cover it.
And the guide mentions visiting both the Argentine and Brazilian sides of the falls. Two-for-one deal on epic views, huh?
Exactly. And speaking of maximizing experiences, let's talk about Patagonia.
Patagonia, the southern tip of South America, the end of the world. It's always sounded so remote and mysterious to me.
It is. It stretches across both Argentina and Chile. Think Andes Mountains, glaciers, incredible wildlife you won't see anywhere else. A nature lover's dream.
Okay, now I'm picturing those epic Patagonian landscapes, the kind you see in National Geographic.
You got it. And the guide recommends visiting Perito Moreno Glacier, not just for the views, but for the activities too. You can hike, kayak, even trek across the glacier itself.
Glacier trekking, that's definitely going on my bucket list. But let's be real, no trip to Argentina is complete without experiencing the wine country. And when it comes to wine, Mendoza is the place. The guide calls it Argentina's wine capital, and I'm ready to claim my throne as the Queen of Malbec.
Mendoza, it's a wine lover's paradise. The altitude, the dry climate, it all comes together to create the perfect conditions for growing grapes, especially Malbec. That's Argentina's signature grape.
The guide talks about different wine regions within Mendoza, each with its own character. There's Luchon de Cuyo, traditional wineries. Then you've got Uco Valley, the modern high-tech wineries. And then Maipú, which is known for its history and all sorts of different wine styles.
What's really cool about Mendoza is the whole vineyard stay thing. Imagine waking up surrounded by vineyards, spending your days tasting wines straight from the barrel.
And learning about the winemaking process from the experts themselves. It sounds like an immersive experience, not just a quick tasting.
Yeah, you're really connecting with the land, the people behind the wine. It's special.
Okay, I'm officially sold on Mendoza. But is it all about wine there? Or are there other things to do in the region?
Mendoza's got more than just wine, though it could easily be. The guide mentioned some pretty awesome adventure stuff, too. You can hike, whitewater raft in the foothills of the Andes.
So we can get our adrenaline pumping amidst the vineyards. Love it.
Exactly. And you can explore this place called Cachuta Canyon. It's stunning.
Okay, so we've got bustling Buenos Aires, epic waterfalls, rugged Patagonia, and wine country. What's next on our Argentine adventure?
How about a journey through history and culture? Salta and the Northwest region, that's where you'll find it. The guide's got a whole chapter on that, and it sounds amazing.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Salta is all about colonial charm. Think cobblestone streets, well-preserved architecture, historical churches. It's like stepping back in time.
I love that. And the guide mentions that indigenous culture is still very present in Salta.
Absolutely. You'll find these vibrant markets bursting with colorful textiles and crafts. It's a living testament to the region's rich heritage. The guide suggests exploring the Quebrada de Humahuaca, this incredible canyon that stretches for over 100 miles.
Hold on, a colorful canyon.
The rock formations themselves are all these different colors thanks to different minerals. It's reds, oranges, yellows, greens. It's surreal.
Okay, that's something you don't see every day, a colorful canyon. And did I read something about a train to the clouds?
You did. It's a scenic train journey right through the Quebrada de Humahuaca. The views, breathtaking. You're surrounded by these colorful canyons, the vast Andes. It's truly unique.
Okay, that's officially on my list. But we've explored mountains, glaciers, rainforests, wine country, ancient canyons. What about the heart of Argentina? The Pampas.
Ah, the Pampas. That vast grassland is where you'll find the gaucho culture.
The gauchos, like the Argentinian cowboys. I'm picturing wide open spaces, horses galloping across the plains, gauchos with their hats and ponchos.
That's the image. The guide goes deep into gaucho life. The horsemanship, cattle herding skills, even their distinctive clothes. It's a whole way of life.
It sounds so romantic.
Yeah.
But does that authentic gaucho life still exist today, or is it more for tourists?
That's a great question. I guess we'll have to find out.
I'm up for the challenge. So how do we experience this gaucho culture?
The guide recommends staying at an estancia.
An estancia? What's that?
It's a traditional ranch. You can ride horses across those endless plains, enjoy a real gaucho asado under the stars.
And learn about cattle ranching from the gauchos themselves. It's like stepping back in time.
Exactly. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. Bustling cities, natural wonders, wine country, even gaucho culture. But there's one more place the guide talks about that has me completely intrigued.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Tierra del Fuego, the very end of the world.
That's right. The southernmost tip of South America. The guide makes it sound almost mythical.
It is. It's a place of extremes. Think dramatic mountains plunging into the sea, glaciers, fjords, and so much wildlife.
And Ushuaia, the southernmost city in the world. The guide makes it sound charming, with a colorful history.
It is, and it's the gateway to Tierra del Fuego National Park, which is full of incredible scenery.
The guide recommends hiking to lagoons, with names like Laguna Esmeralda and Laguna de los Tres. They sound like they're straight out of a fantasy novel.
They really do. And if you're into wildlife, you got to take a boat tour along the Beagle Channel. You'll see penguins, sea lions, all sorts of seabirds in their natural habitat.
Okay, Tierra del Fuego is officially at the top of my list. But all this talk about adventure has me thinking about the practical side of things. What are some tips for actually planning a trip to Argentina?
Great question. And that's where the guide really shines. It's packed with practical information to help you plan your trip and make sure it's smooth sailing. Things like transportation, money matters, safety tips, even cultural insights to help you blend in.
Sounds like we've got a lot to cover. But Argentina, it's not just about the destination, it's about the journey, right?
Absolutely. And so far, this deep dive has definitely been a journey worth taking.
Stay tuned, listeners, because we're just getting started. All right, so we've gotten a taste of Argentina's incredible diversity, from the energy of Buenos Aires to the raw beauty of Patagonia. But let's be real for a second. Getting around a country that stretches over 2,300 miles, that's no small feat.
It's a logistical challenge, for sure.
Luckily, Wonders of Argentina doesn't just show us pretty pictures. It actually dives into the nitty-gritty of transportation.
And trust me, that's key to a smooth trip. Argentina's transportation system, it's an experience.
I'm all for an experience, but I also value efficiency.
Of course. So the guide breaks down the options. Flying, buses, even trains.
Where do we even start?
Well, for those long hauls, especially if you're on a tight schedule, domestic flights are probably your best bet.
That makes sense. Less time traveling, more time exploring.
The guide mentions Aerolíneas Argentinas. That's the national airline.
Right, I've heard of them.
But there are a bunch of low-cost carriers popping up, too, so you've got options.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm always on the lookout for a good deal. But part of the reason I travel is to really see a country, not just hop from one city to the next.
I totally get that. And that's where Argentina's bus system comes in.
Buses. Seriously.
Yeah, but not the kind you might be picturing. These are luxury, long-distance coaches, reclining seats, entertainment systems, even Wi-Fi sometimes.
Hold on. Wi-Fi on a bus. That changes things.
It's a comfortable way to soak in the scenery, maybe even strike up a conversation with some locals.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So we're not talking about cramped, bumpy rides.
Not at all. Plus, the bus system reaches even those tiny, off-the-beaten-path towns that might not have airports.
That's a great point. Getting off the beaten path is always a priority for me.
And don't forget the views. Imagine watching the landscape transform outside your window as you travel, from rolling hills to dramatic mountains.
Okay, I'm sold on the bus idea. But what about train travel? I've always loved the romance of a train journey. Does Argentina have anything worth considering?
You're in luck.
Hmm.
While it's not as extensive as the bus system, the guide mentions a few gems. We already talked about the train to the clouds in Salta. That's a must-do.
Oh yeah, that one's definitely on my list.
But there's also the Patagonian Express, which takes you right through the heart of Patagonia.
Now that sounds like my kind of train trip. Glaciers, forests, those wide-open Patagonian steppes.
It's a journey through some of the most incredible landscapes on Earth.
All right, so we've got flights for efficiency, buses for the scenic route, and trains for the romantic experience. Sounds like Argentina's got all our transportation needs covered. But I have a confession to make. I'm a terrible last-minute planner.
Oh, I know you.
Is that going to work in Argentina? Or am I going to end up sleeping on a park bench?
I admire your spontaneity, but the guide does stress the importance of planning ahead, especially during peak season.
Peak season, that's their summer, right? December to February.
Exactly. Things book up fast, flights, accommodation, tours, everything. A little planning goes a long way, trust me.
All right, point taken. I'll try to be more organized this time.
Yeah.
But speaking of things that need planning, the language barrier. My Spanish is pretty rusty.
Don't worry, most people in tourist areas speak some English.
That's good to know. But I always feel like I should at least try to speak the local language.
I agree. And the guide emphasizes that even a few basic Spanish phrases can make a huge difference.
I know you're right. It shows respect, and it can open up some interesting conversations with locals.
Plus, Argentinians are known for being warm and welcoming. They'll appreciate the effort, even if your Spanish is a bit rough around the edges.
Good to know. So what about money? What's the deal with the currency in Argentina? Any tips for handling finances?
The official currency is the Argentine peso. And the guide has a pretty important tip about exchanging money.
Okay, I'm listening.
Wait until you arrive in Argentina to exchange your money.
Really? Why is that?
You'll get a much better exchange rate in the country.
So don't exchange any money before I go.
Just a small amount, maybe for a taxi from the airport, but that's it. ATMs are widely available, so getting cash isn't a problem.
Good to know. Any specific things to keep in mind when using ATMs in Argentina?
Most ATMs accept international cards, but make sure yours has a chip. And as always, be aware of your surroundings, especially at night.
Right, safety first. Speaking of the safety, does the guide mention anything specific to Argentina that we should be aware of?
It does. The usual common sense stuff applies, like being aware of your surroundings, especially in crowded areas, keeping your valuables close, not flashing a lot of cash.
Right, basic travel smarts.
But if you're using taxis, make sure they're licensed. You can usually tell by the black and yellow paint and the taxi sign on the roof.
Good tip.
And the guide suggests avoiding walking alone at night, especially in unfamiliar areas.
That's sound advice no matter where you are.
And trust your gut. If a situation feels off, it probably is.
It's always better to be safe than sorry. So we've covered transportation, money, and safety. Let's talk about something a little more fun culture. We already touched upon tango, but what other cultural quirks does the guide highlight? I love those little things that make a place unique.
Well, you can't talk about Argentina without mentioning mate.
Mate.
Hmm.
Like a tea. I've seen it in stores, but never tried it.
It's more than just tea. It's a social ritual. It's this herbal drink traditionally shared among friends and family using a special gourd and straw.
Sounds interesting. What does it taste like?
It's a bit of an acquired taste. Kind of bitter, earthy.
Not sure if that's my cup of tea, literally.
But I encourage you to try it at least once. It's a chance to connect with Argentine culture on a deeper level.
Okay, I'm game. I'll try anything once. But let's be honest, no trip to Argentina would be complete without indulging in the food.
Oh, absolutely. Argentine cuisine is incredible. We've talked about asado, but there's so much more to explore.
Hit me with your top recommendations. I'm ready to take notes.
Empanadas are a must-try. Those little savory pastries filled with all sorts of goodness.
Oh yeah, I love empanadas.
And you'll find them everywhere in Argentina. Each region has its own unique twist on them.
Okay, what else?
For a hearty meal, try locro. It's a stew made with corn, beans, and meat. Perfect comfort food, especially if you're in Patagonia and it's a bit chilly.
Locro, I'm adding that to my list. And what about dessert? I have a major sweet tooth.
You're in luck. Argentina is known for its dulce de leche.
Wait, you're not talking about that caramel sauce they sell in jars, are you?
It's similar, but Argentine dulce de leche is on another level. It's richer, creamier, more flavorful, and you'll find it in everything. Cakes, cookies, ice cream.
And alfajores.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those little sandwich cookies filled with dulce de leche, they're a classic.
I'm already drooling. Okay, so we've got our transportation sorted, our finances planned, our safety tips in mind, and our taste buds are ready to be tantalized. But there's one more topic that's super important to me when I travel. Responsible tourism.
Couldn't agree more.
Does the guide address that at all?
Absolutely. Wonders of Argentina dedicates a whole chapter to responsible travel, emphasizing respect for both the environment and local culture.
I love that. So what are some practical ways travelers can be more responsible in Argentina?
The guide suggests simple things, like staying on marked trails when hiking, packing out your trash, being mindful of your water usage.
Right, those are things we should be doing everywhere.
But Argentina is facing some specific challenges like deforestation and climate change, so being extra mindful is key.
That makes sense. So how can travelers support conservation efforts?
Choosing eco-friendly accommodation is a good start.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind when booking my hotels. What else?
Using reusable water bottles and bags, and supporting local organizations that are working to protect the environment.
Great ideas. And what about cultural sensitivity? Any tips on how to be respectful of Argentine culture?
Learning a few basic Spanish phrases is always a good idea.
I'm already working on that.
And be mindful of personal space. Argentinians tend to stand a bit closer when talking than people in some other cultures.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't want to accidentally offend anyone.
And just be respectful of local customs and traditions. If you're invited to someone's home, for instance, it's customary to bring a small gift, like flowers or chocolates.
Good to know. It's all about being a good guest, right?
Exactly. Responsible travel is about engaging with a place and its people in a meaningful and respectful way.
I love that. So we've covered a ton of ground in this segment, from transportation tips to cultural insights to responsible travel practices. I feel like I'm really starting to get a grasp on what it takes to travel well in Argentina.
That's great. Wonders of Argentina gives you the framework, but it's ultimately up to you to create an itinerary that reflects your own interests and travel style.
That's the exciting part. I'm already picturing myself hiking in Patagonia, sipping Malbec in Mendoza, and maybe even attempting a tango lesson in Buenos Aires. But I have to admit, one region keeps calling to me.
Tierra del Fuego.
You read my mind. That sense of remoteness, of being at the edge of the world, it's truly captivating. But before we dive deeper into Tierra del Fuego, let's take a short break. When we return, we'll explore what makes this region so special and why it deserves a prominent spot on your Argentine adventure. We're back, and it's time to tackle that final frontier, Tierra del Fuego. Just the name, it's like instant chills, rugged landscapes, penguins,
It's definitely got that mystique, doesn't it? The guide calls it the end of the world.
and they're not kidding. Southernmost tip of South America, Andes crashing into the Drake Passage. Talk about dramatic.
And that landscape, wow. Snow-capped peaks, glaciers, subantarctic forests. Like something out of a movie.
The guide says it feels ancient, untouched.
There's a raw energy there, you know? It makes you feel pretty small standing in the shadow of those mountains and glaciers.
The guide highlights Ushuaia as the gateway to Tierra del Fuego. Isn't that the southernmost city in the world?
It is. Fascinating place, too. Used to be a penal colony. They sent criminals there from mainland Argentina.
Wow, really? I had no idea.
It's a tourism hub now, but you can still feel that history, you know, in the buildings, the stories.
I love that. Makes it even more intriguing. And speaking of intriguing, the guide mentions Ushuaia is a great spot to explore the Deagle Channel. Penguins, here we come.
The Beagle Channel is amazing for wildlife. It's this narrow strait, separates Tierra del Fuego from some smaller islands, tons of penguins, sea lions, birds.
Okay, so a boat tour along the Beagle Channel is non-negotiable. Got it. But what about inland? Tierra del Fuego National Park. The guide makes it sound like a hiker's dream.
If you're into hiking, this park is a must. You've got everything: glaciers, mountains, forests, lakes.
The guide recommends hiking to some lagoons, Laguna Esmeralda and Laguna de los Tres. Those names, they sound magical.
They are. Laguna Esmeralda is known for its bright green water, and Laguna de los Tres has these incredible views of Mount Fitzroy,
Yeah,
one of the most famous peaks in Patagonia.
I am sold. But how tough are these hikes? Asking for a friend who maybe isn't super experienced.
It depends on the trail. Laguna Esmeralda is pretty easy. A nice walk through forests and peat bogs. Laguna de los Tres, that's a bit more challenging, some steep parts. But the view from the top, worth it.
I can only imagine. Okay, but practical stuff for a second. What about the weather down there? The guide mentions it can be a bit unpredictable.
Tierra del Fuego, get ready for 4 seasons in one day. It's a subpolar oceanic climate, which basically means anything goes. Strong winds, rain, snow, even in summer.
Yikes. So layers are key.
Absolutely. Layers, waterproof gear, good hiking boots, those are must-haves.
Noted. What about getting around? Can we explore independently, or are tours the best option?
Ushuaia has public transportation, and you can rent cars. But for those more remote spots, like the national park, a tour is probably a good idea.
I usually prefer to explore my own, but I can see how a tour would be helpful in Tierra del Fuego.
Right. A good guide can point out things you might miss, tell you about the wildlife, the history. Plus, they know the terrain, so it's safer.
Makes sense. So we've covered the landscapes, the wildlife, the weather, even some practical tips. Tierra del Fuego, it's definitely a place that embodies the spirit of adventure.
It's a reminder that there are still places on Earth that feel truly wild, untouched.
It's like stepping back in time,
Mm.
you know. No cell phones, no distractions,
Yeah.
just you and nature.
It's a powerful experience, definitely.
So here we are, at the end of our deep dive into wonders of Argentina. From the energy of Buenos Aires to those mind-blowing Iguazu Falls, the vineyards of Mendoza, the rugged beauty of Patagonia, and finally, the edge of the world in Tierra del Fuego.
Argentina, it's a country that has it all, really.
This deep dive, it's been a crash course in everything Argentina, but it's just the beginning. Now it's your turn to grab that Wonders of Argentina guide and start planning your own adventure.
Remember, travel is about more than just checking things off a list. It's about immersing yourself in a place, the culture, the experiences. It's about discovering those hidden gems that make a trip truly special.
So go explore. Let Argentina surprise you, challenge you, inspire you. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover a few wonders of your own along the way.
Happy travel!